That ditch is a hazard. You have 90 days to bury it. That was the HOA president in May. My grandfather cut that ditch in 1889. A scraper and 2 mules. She left the bid on my bench. $94,000. Then I left for a fire. 6 weeks, no phone. I came home to 2 pickleball courts on 300 feet of my water. She had a permit. She had a vote. She had done this before. She checked everything. She checked the wrong 300 feet of creek. My name is Harlan Voss. I'm 64 years old, and I grow hops in Bitter Flats County, Idaho. 84 acres of Cascade and Willamette on 18-foot trellis. If you have ever had a beer, it started on ground that looks like mine. My grandfather was Ott Voss. In the spring of 1889, he and his brother cut 3.5 miles of ditch out of Prosper Creek, a Fresno scraper and 2 mules. It took them from snowmelt to the middle of July. 4 generations of us have run water through it. 3 of them are buried at the Kell Cemetery, out past the grain elevator. People here farm, and they picture a tractor and a sunset. Here is what a hop yard actually is. The whole crop happens in 8 weeks. The cones fill in the back half of July. In that window, a hop plant drinks more water than almost anything else grown in this country. If the water stops for even 10 days in July, you don't just lose the cones. The crown underground gives up, and the next season comes in at half. 1 dry July costs you 2 years. My grandmother put the family papers in a coffee can in the well house in 1961 after mice got into the desk. The water decree from 1902 is in there, folded in 4, next to a receipt for a hay rake. And then there was the old gate. Up on the north line, Prosper Creek swings hard against the rim rock. There's a cast-iron headgate wheel there, set on a rock crib. Nobody has turned it since 1957. That year, the ditch company cut a shorter lateral downstream, and everybody was glad about it. There is a brass tag wired to that wheel with baling wire. My grandfather told me one thing about it when I was maybe 10. Don't ever cut that wire off. That was the whole instruction. He never said why, and I never asked. Every spring I pulled the Russian olive back off that crib so the wire would not get grown over. For 50 years it was the most useless job on this place. She came to my shop on a Tuesday in the middle of May, a little after 11 in the morning. Rhonda Vale, 55, president of the Ridgemont Commons Homeowners Association. Before that, she spent 19 years as a right-of-way agent for a pipeline company. She got paid to talk people out of pieces of their own land. I want you to hold on to that because it explains everything that came after. She had a leather folder under her arm and a pair of readers hanging on a chain around her neck. "Mr. Voss?" "That's me." She put the readers on. I learned later what that meant. "Let's be practical here," she said. "That open ditch runs the whole length of our east border. It's a hazard and it's an eyesore. That ditch predates your subdivision by 92 years. And there are children here now." She set a folder on my workbench. "What's this?" "A notice. 90 days to pipe that ditch or wall both banks." "Paid for by who?" "There's a bid inside." I opened it. $94,200. "Ma'am, I'm not in your association." "I know exactly who you are." "Then how are you finding me?" "It isn't a fine," she said. "It's a notice of nuisance." "A notice that costs $94,000. "Safety usually does." I tried being reasonable. "That is the part I would trade back if I could trade one thing." I went in the office and came out with the recorded ditch right of way. It has been on file at the county since 1902. I held it up so she could see it. "There's a recorded right of way on that ditch. It is older than every house you have got." "I'm familiar with rights of way." "Then you know I don't owe you a wall." She did not take it. She looked at it the way you look at a plate of something you have already decided against. 300 feet of that ditch crosses our common area, Mr. Voss, under a recorded right of way. It crosses our ground." She folded the readers down. "On our ground, we decide. That isn't how water works out here. We'll find out." Then she backed her car down my shop drive and never once looked over her shoulder. If you are picturing a bored woman with a folder, that is exactly what I pictured. I went and finished a bearing on the sprayer, and I did not think about her again for 2 weeks. I've been wrong about people before. Never like that. The first notice came on the 2nd of June, $400 a day, continuing nuisance. I took it to a lawyer in Kell named Marcus Dill. He looked at it for about 4 seconds. They can't collect this. You're not a member. So I throw it away. You throw it away. He set it down. Harlan, what do they actually want? I did not have an answer for him. Not in June. 11 days later, an envelope came from the Prosper Ditch Company. Special meeting, the 18th, 7 in the evening, at the fire hall. One item, reclassification of dormant laterals. My lateral was not dormant. It had 11 inches in it that morning. I took my father's water books, 3 of them, black canvas, going back to 1971. Every set, every date, every hour. I put them on the table in front of me like they were going to count for something. 23 people in that hall. I counted twice. Rhonda Vale was sitting at the head table. She was the company treasurer. Nobody had told me. The president was a man named Cal Bream, and he wanted to be somewhere else. I stood up. My lateral has run every season since 1957. Here's every hour of it. Nobody's questioning your history, Bream said. Then what are we voting on? A classification. Classified by who? By the board, by a vote, by a vote. And how many of these 7 seats belong to Ridgemont Commons? Rhonda Vale put the readers on. Let's be practical here, Mr. Voss. It's a housekeeping motion. It isn't about you. Then say my lateral stays active. Say it right now, and I'll go home and let you finish. I won't prejudge a vote. Dale Ferris was at the end of the table. I pulled his combine out of a bog in 2009 with my own tractor. Dale. He looked at the tabletop. 6-1. Emmett Cruz caught me out in the gravel. 73 years old, rode that ditch for the company for 29 years before his hips gave out. 6-1, I said. How does that even happen? 3 of those seats came with developer shares. Ridgemont holds all 3. He shrugged. Dale Ferris and 2 others have houses in there. That's 6 on anything you ever bring. Dill sent a cease and desist on the 21st of June. Nobody answered it. Nobody answered anything all summer. Harlan? Emmett had not moved. She isn't after your ditch. What's she after? She's counting seasons. He got in his truck before I could ask him what that meant. I got called out on the 29th of June. I have been on a fire crew for 31 years. When the Selway went up, they called every hand in 3 counties. I went. That is what you do. And I have never once said no to that phone. 3 weeks. No cell service in the drainage, 1 satellite call a week. Ruth reached me on the 2nd Sunday. There's a crew on the east line. Doing what? Cutting brush. There's a track hoe. Whose side? Theirs, I think. It's getting hard to tell where the line is. That should have been the moment. I was eating out of a foil pouch 9 miles from a road, and I told my wife it was probably brush. She reached me again the next week, and her voice was different. They poured concrete, Harlan. Where? Over the whole thing. There's forms all down the east line. I called Cal Bream from a satellite phone and got him on the 4th try. It's on Association Common Area. The company has no standing there. The company has a right-of-way there. Take it up with them. I'm on a fire. I know where you are, he said, and that was the closest anybody came to telling me the truth that whole summer. Dill filed for a temporary order on the 8th of July. The hearing got set for the 31st. Ruth stopped sending word after the 14th. When I finally got her, she said she would rather I saw it standing up. I came off the mountain on the 19th of July, around 2 in the afternoon, still smelling like the fire. Ruth drove. I made her come in from the north so I would see the creek first. I got out at the property corner and walked the east line myself. 300 feet of concrete, 4 inches thick, broom finished, with painted lines on it and a chain-link fence 8 feet high. 2 pickleball courts side by side and a bench under a little blue sail shade. There was no ditch. That is the part I could not get around. Not a filled ditch, not a piped ditch. There was no evidence that water had ever moved across that ground in 136 years. The check structure was gone. The turnout to my yard was gone. My father set that turnout in 1978, and I mixed the mud for him in a wheelbarrow. On the fence, somebody had zip-tied a laminated sign with a schedule of court hours on it. I walked up into the yard. Hops do not wilt like corn does. They go dull, then the cones go papery. By the time you can see it from the road, it is already over. I pulled one down and rolled it between my fingers. It crumbled instead of squeaking. I dug into the ground at the base of the crown with my knife until I hit dry. 4 inches, 18 days. I had 18 days of water in that dirt. I called the sheriff's office on the 20th. A deputy named Trey Lund met me at the east line at 4 in the afternoon. "Mr. Voss, whose ground is under this?" "Theirs. The ditch across it is mine." "Then it's civil. They destroyed a water structure, and I can't arrest a pickleball court." He was decent about it. Take it to court. That's the truth of it. He was gone in 9 minutes. I went to the county the next morning. Aaron Wick at the permits desk had it on his screen in about 40 seconds. Recreation facility, association common area, approved the 29th of May. Say that date again. 29th of May. Something wrong? 20 days before the ditch company voted, she had that permit in her folder the entire evening I stood in that fire hall. My father's water books were sitting on the table. The letter came on the 24th of July from a firm in Coeur River. 4 pages. Extremely courteous. If I would convey my ditch company shares to the company for $1, every notice would be withdrawn. It is paragraph 6 I kept. I got Dill on the phone and gave it to him. "That's a threat, Harlan." "It's a very well-mannered one." "It's a well-mannered threat." Paper moved on his end. "Is your lateral carrying water right now?" "There is no lateral. There are 2 pickleball courts." "That's what I'm asking." "Then no. How long can it sit dry before somebody argues you gave it up?" "You tell me." 5 years in this state," he said. "That's the clock they're watching." 18 days of water. The hearing was the 31st. I did that arithmetic twice at the kitchen table. A hearing does not put water in a ditch. 2 days later, I was at the feed store in Kell, and Bo Rickert found me at the loading dock. 35, grounds manager for Ridgemont Commons for 4 seasons. "You did not get this from me." "All right. That lake of theirs, 7 acres, and it's the whole reason those lots sold. Every house in there paid a premium for the view." "So?" "So it's filled off the creek on a 1981 right, and the state shorts us most of August." He looked down the dock. "The board's been hunting a senior right for 4 years. There's one on this creek, Harlan. Just the one." I did not say anything. "She isn't after your ditch. She's after your date." 1889. That is what she came to my shop for in May. It took me 11 weeks and 300 feet of concrete to hear somebody say it out loud. I quit arguing about the ditch. That sounds like folding. I had spent 11 weeks arguing about pipe and walls and concrete. Every one of those arguments happened on ground Rhonda Vale picked, so on the 26th of July I went looking for paper instead. The county recorder is in the basement of the courthouse in Kell. Verna Ott has been behind that counter for 31 years. I told her what I was after, and she brought a cart. The 1902 decree came up first, not my grandmother's folded copy, the recorded one in a book with a spine held together by tape. Priority number 9, appropriation date the 4th of April, 1889, 6 1/10 cubic feet per second out of Prosper Creek to Ott Voss and his successors. Then I asked for the company minutes. How far back? 1957. The company cut the new lateral in April of that year. The minutes give the reason. To shorten the run and reduce loss. 11 words for something 4 generations of my family lived by. Verna, is there anything in here about the water district or a court? About what exactly? About moving where the water comes out of the creek. She went through the index, then the whole decade, then the decade after it. "There's nothing, Mr. Voss. Nobody ever filed a thing." "You're certain?" "I would have found it." I sat down in that basement for a while with my hands flat on the table. Then I drove home and took the coffee can off the shelf in the well house. I had walked past that can maybe 20,000 times. The lid came off with a screwdriver and the paper inside smelled like tin. The 1902 decree was folded in 4 and the creases had gone soft. The description was as clean as the day a clerk copied it out. I said the last line of it out loud, standing in a well house. To nobody. The point of diversion being the iron gate upon the north bank of Prosper Creek, 940 feet above the Rim Rock Ford. I called Emmett Cruz at 5 the next morning. "Bring a saw and a pry bar." We were up on the north line by 6. It took the two of us 3 hours to get through 50 years of Russian olive. My grandfather's saw marks were still in the crib rock where he had cleared it the last spring he could. The wheel was seized but whole. Under the thorns, still wired to the spoke, was the brass tag. Ott Voss, Priority 9, 1889. Emmett looked upstream, then he looked downstream. Then he looked at me, and for the first time since May I watched that man laugh. "You know where you're standing, Harlan?" "North bank." "How far above the ford?" 940 feet. "And where does Ridgemont pull their lake water?" I had driven past their intake 1,000 times and never once thought about it as a spot on a creek. 310. 310, Emmett said. "You have been taking your water downstream of them since Eisenhower, and that ditch under their concrete was never once the ditch on your paper. Water only goes one direction. That is, the entire thing." For 68 years, my family's water ran past Ridgemont Commons first and came to us after. Nobody thought about it. There was nothing to think about. They poured concrete over the wrong ditch. I called Marcus Dill from the truck. "Where are you?" "Standing on my point of diversion." I gave him the description off the decree. He was quiet long enough that I looked at the phone. "Harlan, has anybody ever filed to move that point?" "Verna went through 3 decades. Nothing." "Then you don't need anybody's permission. You need a watermaster." We filed 3 things on the 28th of July, a written call on Prosper Creek to administer Priority Number 9, an action to confirm the decreed point of diversion and the right-of-way, and a claim for the turnout and the lateral. Emmett and I spent 2 days at the crib with a bar, a torch, and a can of penetrating oil. On the second afternoon that iron wheel turned. I did not set foot on their property. Not once. Not one boot. Thursday, the 31st of July, 6:40 in the morning, a state truck came up the county road. Joyce Tam has been deputy watermaster in this district for 11 years. She had a clipboard, a staff gauge, and a chain in a canvas bag. She looked at my gate. She looked at the brass tag. She wrote for a long while. Then she drove 630 feet downstream and shut the Ridgemont intake to its decreed share. In the last week of July, that is almost nothing. Rhonda Vale got there at 7:15. Bo Rickert was already at the fence with 3 board members and a woman walking a dog. "You can't do that. That gate fills a lake for 118 homes. It fills an amenity," Joyce said. "Their household water comes off the city system. Nobody is losing a tap." Rhonda Vale put the readers on. "Let's be practical here." Joyce did not look up from the clipboard. "Ma'am, I don't decide who gets water. The decree does. His is 1889. Yours is 1981. Rhonda Vale turned and looked at a brass tag with my grandfather's name stamped into it. For the first time since May, she did not have anything to say. By that afternoon, my water came down a channel my grandfather cut with a Fresno. It went into 84 acres of hops with 6 days to spare. Emmett turned the wheel himself. He would not let me do it. The lake dropped 4 inches the first night. Nobody noticed, but Bo. By Thursday, it was down 11 inches. A wet gray band showed all the way around. By the weekend, the whole association knew. They called every water user on Prosper Creek trying to lease a share. In the last week of July, there is nothing to lease. That is what a senior right is. The hearing went ahead that same morning, 40 miles away. Their attorney had driven up from Coeur River to argue about a recreation facility. He spent most of an hour learning that the recreation facility was no longer the interesting part of the case. If you think that is where it ended, you have never watched a man-made lake go down in August. Day 9, the shallow end went to mud and the smell started. Day 14, the dock stood on dry, cracked bottom with 4 pontoon boats sitting on their trailers beside it. Day 19, the fountain in the middle was a pipe sticking out of a mud flat. Around the middle of August, homeowners started looking at their own governing documents. 4 of them called me to ask who exactly had authorized a concrete facility on ground the association did not control. The autumn festival moved to a parking lot. 11 listings came off the market. On the 2nd of September, a board member named Judith Ames came up my shop drive. She did not apologize. "Mr. Voss, would you consider selling us water?" We settled in March for $612,000. The court confirmed the decreed point of diversion in a hearing that ran 22 minutes. The special assessment came out at $9,850 a house, across 118 houses. The lake refilled the following June, 3 feet low. Rhonda Vale resigned 8 days before the recall vote. She listed in April, and the listing sat 14 months because every photograph on it had a mudflat in the background. She never once said she got it wrong. As far as I know, she still believes somebody cheated her. We picked in September. Best yield off that ground in 11 years. Here's the part I keep coming back to. My grandfather stamped his name and a date into a piece of brass. He wired it to a gate where anybody could have found it. He told me not to cut the wire, and he never told me why. I pulled brush off that crib every spring for 50 years without once turning the tag over. It took a woman pouring concrete over my ditch to make me go up there and look. What is wired to something in your yard that you walk past every single day?